Welcome to the docket presented by Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata. So we're back again. The case that never sleeps, the case that literally never sleeps. So as you guys know, I was streaming for, I think, 11 hours yesterday between the Crumley trial and then the marathon 3.5 hour stream last night with the filing by Andy Baldwin and multiple filings by our favorite lead pipe carrying defense attorney David Hennessy. I was hoping for a day of rest, to be honest with you, but it's just the case that never sleeps. So, needless to say, there's another public filing today, and again, David Hennessy has filed another motion. And why waste any time? Let's get right down to it. I'm going to pull it up here. Okay. All right. This is the one. All right. So what we have here, and this is a very, very interesting filing. I'm just going to read through it. The thing pretty much speaks for itself. So let's go. Why waste any time? All right. Come now, counsel for defense counsel, and respectfully moves the court for an emergency continuance only of the March 18th, 2024 contempt proceedings. In support of this request, counsel states the following. 1. On March 1, 2024, counsel took the deposition of First Sergeant Holman, at which time it was learned that there were recorded interviews that had not been provided to the prosecutor or counsel. It was also learned that the attachments to First Sergeant Holman's report had not been provided to the prosecutor or counsel. Mr. McCleland promised to get them. Paragraph 2. On March 11th, 2024, counsel first received the recorded interviews of Talhara Ihlenfeld, probably butchering that name. It's a name I have not seen before. Talhara Ihlenfeld, Robert Fortson, Rick Snay, Anya Kane, and Kevin Greenlee. Together, Mark Robert Cohen and Kyra De Bruin, as well as the omitted attachments to the report. Due to other obligations, counsel was first able to listen to the recorded interviews the morning of March 13th, 2024. The recorded interviews contain a wealth of information that beg independent investigation of the source of various photographs that were posted on the internet and traded between people on the internet. Additionally, had counsel had the omitted materials prior to First Sergeant Holman's deposition, he would have asked many more questions, which need to be asked for proper preparation and representation. Paragraph 5. The recorded interview of Miss Ihlenfeld revealed that she recognized that Libby's sweatshirt was on Abby. She had confirmed that she received photos from a Tyler Carpenter, and there was some connection to a screenshot from George Rye, a former law enforcement officer. This was the first counsel had heard of those people, and the first time he had heard anything about Mrs. Ihlenfeld. She also confirmed that she had corresponded with Mr. McCleland. She also indicated that she had been part of a small Facebook group, Reddit group, and a YouTube channel, as well as a public discourse server with private chats. She also revealed that a person known to her had hired a private investigator to follow Mr. McCleland. She also identified other persons possibly involved in the dissemination of photographs and named a Paul Mannion, which is another name counsel had never heard of. Lastly, she agreed to provide screenshots to First Sergeant Holman, and they agreed to do that later. Counsel had not received any screenshots and first learned of their existence when listening to the recording. Paragraph 6. During the interview with Robert Fortson, he invoked his right to counsel more than a half a dozen times. And First Sergeant Holman acknowledged that he, quote, had a Fourth Amendment right to counsel, end quote, even though that is the wrong amendment, but continued to question him. First Sergeant Holman referenced a guy from Texas, Mark Robert, who we now know is Mark Robert Cohen, and a K. Smith, which was a name counsel had never been made aware of in preparing for the contempt proceedings. There's no indication that Mrs. Smith was ever interviewed by First Sergeant Holman. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Fortson that the judge isn't very happy, and he could be charged with contempt of court. He also told him that if he didn't give a statement, that would be obstruction of justice and possibly contempt of court. When Mr. Fortson indicated to First Sergeant Holman that he was not comfortable speaking with him until he was able to seek consultation, First Sergeant Holman told him that if he didn't cooperate and delete whatever he had, that if he called the judge and told her that he's not willing to cooperate, I'm going to make a call and see if she wants to issue that order or not. This is when First Sergeant Holman also referenced that Mr. Fortson could be charged with obstruction of justice and contempt. First Sergeant Holman then said, "Let me make a call to the judge real quick, and we'll go from there." He left the room for several minutes. He then returned and told Mr. Fortson that he had talked to the prosecutor, and if he was not willing to turn over any pictures or information, basically that there would be consequences. First Sergeant Holman also said that the judge had said, if they have photographs, to get them and get the information about where they got them. First Sergeant Holman then told Mr. Fortson his lack of cooperation was going to ruin Richard Allen's rights to a fair trial and really going to mess some things up for him. And then he said, quote, "Doesn't bother me any because it's all bullshit in my opinion," end quote. First Sergeant Holman also told Mr. Fortson that this is, quote, "some serious shit," end quote, and that the judge is adamant that he gets the photos out of circulation. Mr. Fortson then confirmed that he didn't have anything like that in his possession and that there was nothing for him to delete or anything like that at all. Paragraph 6. I mean, paragraph 5 is a lot. Paragraph 5 is a lot. It's a lot to process, a lot to digest. Paragraph 6, Rick Snee was interviewed by telephone. Mr. Snee indicated he had received 4 photos from Kyra DeBruin. Mr. Snee also indicated that he had heard that other people had received photos from Mark Robert and K. Smith. Mr. Snee indicated that he had gotten the photographs Thursday, but no date was provided in his interview. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Snee that the judge was very adamant that if any got released by anybody, that she was going to, quote, "issue contempt of court," end quote. March 13th of 2024 was the first time counsel had heard of the name Kyra Smith. So I don't know if that's supposed to be DeBruin or K. Smith. It's either K. Smith or DeBruin, one of the two. I'm going to go with K. Smith. That's what I think it's going to be. Paragraph 7, in the interview with Kyra DeBruin, she indicated that her source was through Reddit from a, quote, "lordless warrior," end quote, who she believed was Ron something. First Sergeant Holman then asked if it could be Robert Fortson, and she indicated that quote, "sounded familiar," end quote. She never firmly identified Robert Fortson. Whether Lordless Warrior was Ron someone or Robert Fortson, Mr. Bruin indicated that person had deleted an entire conversation. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Bruin that the judge was pretty upset and had said if they do get shared, she was going to issue, quote, "warrants for contempt of court." Counsel has been provided no information identifying Lordless Warrior as Robert Fortson. The true identity of Lordless Warrior needs to be investigated. Paragraph 8. Mark Robert Cohen in his interview indicated his source was Robert Fortson and that Fortson had told him to delete everything. Mr. Cohen had the impression that Mr. Fortson was an attorney. Mr. Cohen also indicated that Mr. Fortson had made a $500 donation to his daughter's Make-A-Wish fund, which First Sergeant Holman, then referred to as a GoFundMe. The donation was done before and was unrelated to any conversation about or receipt of any photographs. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Cohen that the judge had told the prosecutor, who had told him that if anybody doesn't produce these or isn't willing to delete or, quote, give it up, end quote, she's going to issue orders for contempt of court, end quote. And that's, quote, end quote. On whoever released them will get charged with contempt of court. Paragraph 10, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee of the Murder Sheet podcast were interviewed together. They provided printed copies of photographs to First Sergeant Holman. They identified their source as Mark Robert, but they only had 7 photographs, while the prosecution had alleged that 9 photographs were disseminated. They did reference a cursor on the photograph of a close-up of Abby's head, which is curious and belies the theory that they were photographs of photographs. Mrs. Kane and Mr. Greenlee indicated the close-up of the head was to document something in the hair, which was supposed to be antlers or horns. That indicates that some source other than what has been alleged. At the end of the interview, Ms. Kane and Mr. Greenlee told First Sergeant Holman that they would provide him, quote, 100 plus screenshots, end quote. Counsel has not received any screenshots that were provided to First Sergeant Holman. Paragraph 11, had these interviews been timely provided to counsel or counsel would have had many, many more questions for First Sergeant Holman during his deposition and would have engaged in additional investigation, such as the people never before known, alternate sources of photographs, and the true identity of Lordless Warrior, and more. On March 13th of 2024, Mr. McCleland indicated that he would try to get the screenshots, quote, if they exist, end quote, when he had time, end quote. That is nice, but not very helpful at this point. First Sergeant Holman seemed to believe if there are recordings or documents or people he doesn't consider important to his theory, it and they do not need to be provided. 14. At this point, there is no time to accomplish those tasks to fully, fairly, and competently represent defense counsel on March 18th, 2024, that he would try to get screenshots. Lastly, undersigned counsel learned on March 13th, 2024, that his favorite aunt had passed away on March 12th, 2024. Condolences, David. He did not know the service arrangements at that time. 16, it should be noted that this request applies only to the contempt proceedings. It would not cause any delay in the other hearings scheduled the same day or the trial. 17, in Ramirez v. State, 186 Northeast 3rd, 89, Indiana case out of 2022, the Indiana Supreme Court on transfer reversed the denial of a continuance by this very court when counsel specifically identified the late discovery of interviews and new allegations, the effect upon counsel's theory and preparation, and what counsel needed to do further to the late discovery. That is exactly this case. Wherefore, counsel for defense respectively praised the court to continue the March 18th, 2024 contempt proceedings. Respectfully submitted, David R. Hennessy, verified to swear under penalties of perjury that the foregoing representations are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. And then we've got the certificate of service. And this, like typically what's done, he's got a prepared order in the event that Judge Gull would grant relief and continue the contempt hearing. It basically just as a boilerplate comes now defense counsel and having filed his verified emergency motion for continuance, and the court being duly advised on the premises now grants said motion. It's therefore ordered and adjudged and decreed by the court that the March 18th, 2024 contempt hearing be rescheduled for whatever day that she may be so inclined to set it. So that's it. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to digest. You know, I don't know how much I need to dig into what I just read. Um, I mean, it's a lot of more of the same with respect to. It appears to me that there's just not the type of flowing of discovery, and this is an ancillary proceeding. This is not the trial. I mean, if you watched my live last night, you know that Hennessy has already filed a motion trying to continue this thing because it's ancillary. Like it can wait. Like there's no reason to be having this hearing now, diverting everyone's time. But honestly, most importantly, at this juncture, Nick McCleland's time towards preparing for this thing when it can just wait until after the trial. I mean, if this thing goes and say Gull uh, is still furious, and she says, "You know what, Andy and Brad, I'm going to, I am my punishment for you. So I'm going to sentence you to 10 days, 15 days in the county jail." At that point, counsel's asking for a stay until after trial. She's not going to throw them in jail while there's only 60 days left to trial and have them sitting in there when they can't prepare when she knows that there's a trial date. She would have to stay the sentence, and it would happen after the trial. And the same goes for anything else. This concept that she's going to boot these guys is just, it's not plausible. Not with a trial bearing down. I mean, it's like it's guaranteeing, it's all but guaranteeing a retrial if Alan's convicted, if she kicks these guys off with the trial date set. It's just one of those things where, like I said last night, the 70-day really tied her hands, in terms of what she can do. Uh, Whether or not that was done strategically in order to limit her with respect to what she may or may not be able to do. And look, I mean, the reality is we know that Judge Gull does what she wants to do. So, like, I'm certainly not sitting here saying that it is impossible that she would remove them from the case a second time. But I think that she would also understand that they would again file another original action. And I mean, it's going to get heard. And based on what I read in the Supreme Court opinion, to me, it seems very likely that they would be reappointed again based on the fact that to remove them based on the thing that the things that the high court's already heard is structural error, and that results unequivocally in a new trial. So, I haven't even looked at the chat here. I imagine there's a lot of comments going on right here. Um, in terms of some of the, like I said, so some of this stuff just speaks for itself. In terms of, and look, all of this information was gleaned from recordings, from depositions. David Hennessy's not sitting around making this stuff up. Just so you understand that, like all this has come from what was provided to the defense in terms of discovery for this matter. And again, let's not forget who picked this fight, a fight that's already been had, a fight that does nothing but cause Nick McCleland to not be able to prepare for the trial that matters to everybody. So, I'm not going to read through it again. Y'all are going to have to go back and rewatch it. To me, it's another stunning filing. It's just and I don't even know which part I'm most stunned by. I don't know if I'm most stunned by, the fact that it appears that First Sergeant Holman was using Judge Gull, is throwing her name around in order to intimidate Fortson. It sure seems like it to me. I would find it hard to believe that Sergeant Holman had a direct line to Judge Gull. I'm sure that he could call McCleland, but that would mean that McCleland was having ex parte communications with Judge Gull. And I don't see that happening either. So, to me it seems like he went in trying to bully this guy who asked for counsel no less than 6 times into giving up the pictures, and we all know what happened with Robert Fortson, sadly. So, um, I don't know. It's a lot to digest. It really is. And, I keep saying it, I mean, does anybody really want this thing on the 18th to go at this point? Like, I mean, this stuff has nothing to do with Abby and Libby and the horrible crimes that were perpetrated against them. It has nothing to do with it. And the only thing that we're talking about in the last 2 weeks has been this hearing that's coming up. That's completely superfluous. It's ancillary. It's collateral. It's all the things other than the thing that it should be, which is preparing for trial, which is bearing down on us. It's going to be here in the blink of an eye, and I said it last night and I'm going to say it again. I have zero idea if McCleland watches these. I don't know. And, I'm sure he thinks I'm some, shitbag defense attorney and like, why the fuck would I listen to that guy? Because it's common sense, for everybody involved in this case, for the families of the victim. You need to be preparing for trial, not dealing with this thing. Like, none of it's new. It's like we're rehashing the same thing over and over and over. And now you've picked this fight where, I mean, like we're reading about social media and creators being dragged into this thing, with this leak. I've got guys like writing my name in pleadings that make no sense, and it's just, like everything that's going on with it. It's just time to focus on the trial. It's just, in my opinion, this thing on the 18th, and I cannot see a world in which Gull denies it. But then again, I can see a world that she denies this. That I'm talking about the continuance. I mean, like when you read this motion in conjunction with the motion he filed yesterday with respect to, his like, let's go to trial. Let's go to trial. It's the trial. It's time for trial. Let's forget about your motion to punish defense counsel and let's go to trial. It's time for trial. So, all right, I'm not doing a 3-hour live tonight, y'all. I'll tell you that right now. I'm about to go eat dinner. Don Burke, $10 holla. This case is corrupt. All parties don't get justice. I mean, that's kind of the under our overarching theme, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. There's something, I've said it for months and months. Something stinks in Delphi. It just does. Like, this is not like I've tried like crazy cases where, and it's not abnormal for defense counsel and prosecutors not to play nice. It's not at all. This is like a different level of it, the likes of which I've never seen. And I've talked to a lot of attorneys about this case, and they're all saying the same thing. Like, I've never seen anything like this. And it's just so bizarre because it's such a high profile, under the microscope case that it's just hard to fathom. Like, what's going on? I don't know. It's just hard for me to understand it. It's like, and again, in the search for justice, like, and it's, I hear other creators talking about it all the time. Who's getting lost in this are those two little girls. I mean, that seems like a million miles away. And, this guy that's sitting in jail, uh, I mean, I have to believe he's sitting there having not a clue what's going on, aside from when his lawyers can make I don't know how long, 2.5 hour, 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive to go see him. And, these guys have to be preparing for trial. There's a lot of work to be done. I promise you that. There is so much work that needs to be done by both sides to get this thing ready for trial. So much work. The least of which is just preparing the subpoenas and getting them all issued and finding your experts and lining them up to come and testify and trying to get everything, all your ducks in a row, is just a massive amount of work. And, if you know anything about Carroll County and that prosecutor's office, it's small. McCleland does not have a lot of help in there. I mean, if you follow the case, and I've talked about it, McCleland's in with the board begging for $5,000 so he can hire some help. I mean, it's just like I said last night, it really doesn't matter what side of this you're on. And frankly, everybody should be in the middle, like in terms of innocence or guilt until trial happens, because it's the proper place to be. But in terms of the reality of this case getting to trial and it being properly tried by the state, by the defense, these guys need every second of their time to be focused completely on preparing for this trial and nothing else. McCleland has had, I don't know, a lost 2 weeks. I'm assuming he's got Luttrell working on things, but that's one lawyer. And it's an enormous amount. It's an enormous amount. So, again, I would, I'm just some lawyer on YouTube, but I know what the right move is. This thing needs to go away. Like, if I'm McCleland, I'm begging for this thing to get continued tomorrow by Gull, just to so he can say, "Oh my God, thank God. Oh my God, thank you. Now I don't have to deal with this bullshit." It's just, I mean, I don't know why he filed it. Maybe he felt like the judge wanted him to file it. Because she was so hell bent on having these guys off the case. Maybe he felt compelled to do it. I'm certainly not suggesting she asked him, but maybe he's like, maybe the judge thinks I should file this thing. I just can't see in a logical world where he would reach the conclusion that he should file it. And then what you get when you file something like this is you get this from David Hennessy. And if you think that this is something, wait till he's in the well of the courtroom, just destroying witnesses. Because I'll tell you what, that guy in his 40 years cross-examined a few people, and it's an art. and I wouldn't want to be on the stand with him crossing me. And I'm, a pretty capable guy. I don't want that dude coming at me. And he's going to be coming at an awful lot of people, and an awful lot of people that didn't sign up for it, and some people that did sign up for it. And it's going to be a thing. So, all right, let me go through, and I'm going to leave it at that. Y'all can come back and rewatch it if you want to read through the document. For some reason, it appears that it was filed, and he got receipt that it was filed, and it was in Odyssey. I don't know why it didn't show up. So, all right. I got a $5 hollow. Bob, thank you for being the voice of rationality in this shit show. Well, some would disagree with you. Some would sit there and say that, I'm a raving lunatic, even though I'm obviously not. I'm adamant about the Constitution, even though there's people out there that think that the Constitution is just a tool that lawyers use to hide from the law. It's one of the greatest things I've ever read. We appreciate your knowledge and your passion, especially for Libby and Abby. Thank you very much. We got a family hug here, member for 1 month. Thank you for your level-headed knowledge, Bob. Appreciate you. True Crime Time. Southern Sweet Tea, $2 hollow. Why Discoin? Not give a fuck. It's not their jurisdiction anymore. Like, they're not, like, they had their, their time is over. Like, they're not sitting there like overseeing the trial courts in the state of Indiana. In order to get in front of them, you got to do what was done earlier. You got to file a writ of mandamus. And, if something crazy happens on the 18th, it's exactly right back where we're going to be. No one can think that there is any chance that if she removed Baldwin and Rozzi again, that it's not going right back up there. And what that does to the speedy, I have no idea. That's a hard and fast date. It's the man's constitutional right to have a speedy trial. It's disaster waiting to happen. If that move happens, it's disaster in every single way. If she decides to remove them, there's plenty other punitive things that she could do to them to, slap their hands for their bad behavior, and taking them off the case again can't be it. Not with this trial date pending. And I have to believe the judge set the trial date. She certainly could have waited until after the 18th to set the trial date, but she set it. And, I have to believe that she's of the mindset that's not on the table. But what do I know? I've whiffed on things that she may or may not do on more than one occasion. So, she continues to surprise me. Let me put it that way. $10 holla from Don Burke. Always give. Appreciate you. They just want somebody found guilty. The girls and RA are pawns in the game. That's incredibly sad to think that way. And I'm not saying that you're wrong in the way that you're thinking that way. I'm saying it's incredibly depressing to think that anybody in any capacity would be using Abby and Libby's deaths as, some kind of tool for another purpose. And same with Rick Allen, and look, I got into it for a long time last night. Like I said, I don't know what the evidence is other than what we've all seen. I know it's going to go to trial, and I know we're going to hear what they got. And, if this thing ends up where, because Nick wasn't ready, and he did the best that he could with the time that he was allotted, and Allen gets off on what I consider to be like a reasonable doubt, like where the jurors are just like, it wasn't enough. Like like I didn't feel secure convicting him. Because remember, this case is Allen County jurors, it's not Carroll County. There's a high likelihood that they'll be able to impanel an impartial jury to a great extent. If it's in Carroll County, because when I say the rest of the world's watching it, it's like the rest of the world that cares about true crime. If you live in Allen County tomorrow, why don't you do a little experiment? Walk down the street, maybe in downtown Fort Wayne, and just randomly ask 10 people if they've heard about the case and what they know about it. I think you'll be surprised to find out that not nearly as many people know about it as you think. And like, don't start chatting. Like I talked to 2 people in Fort Wayne and they knew it. Talking about like a random poll, just going up to peoples of all ages. Like if you think that millennials know what's going on in this case that aren't true crime fanatics or followers or fans, they don't. They have no idea what's going on with this case. You think that a bunch of seniors that aren't into true crime know anything about this case? They don't. You think that busy, middle-aged folks that are running around working every day that aren't true crime fans know about this? They don't. So I think they're going to be able to impanel an impartial jury for the most part. And, this thing's going to go. And if Rick Allen is found not guilty, and like I said last night, if it's by way of, that the jury just didn't feel like there was enough, not because they thought he was actually innocent, I worry about Rick Allen, like outside of prison, and like I said last night, even if he's been found not guilty, like there's going to be the people that still believe that he's guilty. Like the only way that like somebody in a case like this gets out from under it is by figuring out if it was somebody else, who the hell else that is. Who is it? And like, and all I would suggest to you is if you've got a defense team that's putting in the work in order to try to find out who that is, instead of rooting so vehemently against them, not knowing what the evidence is, you should really be rooting for them. Because if they're right, and we're talking about 2 sets of lawyers, 2 sets of attorneys that have gone through all the discovery, that believe that Rick Allen's actually innocent, then that means, and if they're right, that means that the killers are still out there. And it seems to me, based on what we read last night with respect to the geofence data, that law enforcement doesn't seem all that interested in finding out who these other guys are. So it seems to me that the only people that are digging into this is the defense. If that day comes, if they can prove something up at trial, I wonder aloud, if they somehow uncover if Rick Allen in fact is actually innocent, if they somehow uncover who did this, I wonder what people's feelings about Andy Baldwin and Brad Rozzi will be then. We have a duty as defense attorneys to investigate these crimes. These guys do not want to have to rely on reasonable doubt. My fear is that with the shortened time frame, because like I said, that works against both sides. This isn't just like punishment to the state. It puts both sides, it puts their feet to the fire. and it's a lot. All right, so thank you for that $10 hollow. I appreciate you always, Don Berg. Amanda, the $10 hollow. Get yourself a box of tea and hot honey. Can you hear it in my voice? Shit's hanging on by a thread. That's true. That's true. Thank you so much for your generosity. $5 super sticker. Appreciate it, Bougie Owl. Love that moniker. Thanks for these streams. Never stop reading the full docs. I am who I am, I mean, they gotta be read. So I appreciate you for being a member, a family member, more than you know. BuzzFeed print edition member for 1 month. Love that. Heard Counselor L1, hear you now. Appreciate that. Like that. Like even being mentioned in the same breath. You know what I mean? Okay, so I think I'm about done. I gotta shout out Pokemon. Family hug. Love you. Thank you for being a member. Don Burke gifted 10 memberships. Always giver. Thank you so much. You're so incredibly generous. I can't even tell you. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Lola Winston gifted 5 Defense Diaries memberships. So there's 15 lucky people out there that got gifted memberships. Welcome to the fam, y'all. Huh? Oh yeah. Allison's down there screaming at me instead of being on the live. It's amazing. The Royal We new member. Family hug. Welcome, Royal We. Love that. And I'm assuming that's from the Big Lebowski. So I can tell you're my kind of people. I-43 Pammy, new member. Family hug. Appreciate you. Let's see. What do we got here? I'm trying to show it. Whispers in the Wind becomes a member. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And all my mods who came last second, I love you. Thank you so much for what you do. It means everything to me. And my girl, my woman, my homie, my right-hand gal, my purveyor of all documents, Dizzy, happy birthday. Happy birthday. I adore you. You and Mandy are my two ride or dies. And so I wish you the happiest birthday. And I'm sorry that I'm keeping you up late. Or if you're even here, I hope you're not here actually, but knowing you, you probably are. But I wish you the happiest birthdays. Of course she is. Of course she should be enjoying herself, not listening to my big ass mouth. So, all right. Hennessy comes with the receipts once again. I think there's some pretty intense stuff going on. No, like what? Defense attorney meow? No, no, she didn't grant anything yet. No, that what you're seeing, and I'm going way back to 832. That's a proposed order by Dave Hennessy that he included with the motion. Yes, this was filed today. So that's it, y'all. I'm sure I'll be back tomorrow. I'm sure there's going to be another filing. I just feel it in my bones. More than that, I mean, there's a filing every day. Let's just be real about it. There's always a filing in this case. And I appreciate y'all for being here. No notice, I'm like that no notice guy. Yet I got 842 kind souls in here, and I'm sure some souls that probably aren't big fans of mine. So thanks for coming anyway. Appreciate you. So thanks all. Love you. Take care. And just remember, without you, just an old man talking about.